We do need to take one last break, but still ahead, SUNY Adirondack is working to help local farms become more sustainable. An ecology professor from the college will be joining me next to tell us about legislation that would help them even more. So you've heard us say many times before that agriculture is the state's largest industry, with farms both big and small providing jobs and, of course, food for New York. But still, some farms are struggling while some consumers are unable to get fresh produce at affordable prices. SUNY Adirondack is hoping to change that and in the process help agriculture become more sustainable, which is a word that we will be defining thanks to the guest that we have just now, ecology professor Tim Scherbatskoy. Thank you very much for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so this is one of those like hot button kind of like it words, right? And I think people toss it around and don't really know what it means. So please define.
It's a good word. People know it's good, but I think what it really means is being able to continue the practice without a lot of input from outside sources for a long time. The seventh generation idea is to consider the long-term impact of whatever you're doing. So in sustainable agriculture, we're talking about a system of raising crops and treating our land in a way that we can keep on doing forever. That's a very strict definition. Currently, we put an awful lot of energy and a lot of fossil fuels, and a lot of fertilizers from synthetic sources to keep our agricultural system running. So the sustainability idea is something that would recycle a lot of the materials that you're using and not have to bring them in from outside.
So is it possible for big agriculture to be sustainable?
It is.
It is?
It is, absolutely. A simple definition of sustainable agriculture brings you very quickly to organic agriculture, because the point of organic agriculture is to protect the soil and to nourish and restore the soil. And that's done by manure being used and composted on site, so dairy herds can provide that. And there are some very big farms who are operating organically. I mean, I know of a 500-acre grain farm that is producing top quality grains in New York, mostly sold to the beverage industry for brewing some of the new up-and-coming farm.
Very hot topic with the governor these days.
Some of the farm brewing programs. Over 500 acres of organic production. And the reason he's doing it is because, well, there's a market for it, but he knows in the long run it's going to be cheaper and it's going to produce better crops. Sustainable
could also be applied, could it not, to the idea of agriculture being a going concern in this, as a business in this state. Your idea, yes. I think, if I understand it correctly, is to help farms be a continuous economic source of generating the product and generating jobs, and also getting that product to people who need it.
Right. Right. So there are many levels of sustainability, and again, everyone says, oh, sustainable, that's good. What does it mean in the farming and agriculture sector? What does it mean more in the social sector? And that's what you're getting at, I think.
Yeah.
So trying to create systems where food can be circulated economically and with a low energy impact. We've all heard of the carbon footprint. So the carbon footprint of a lot of the food that we consume is terrible. Commercial agriculture tends to spend 5 times as much energy on raising 1 unit of food as we get from the food value from that. And to be able to get that food raised more locally, to be able to get it into systems that everyone has access to, would be a way of making agriculture locally more sustainable and keep on going and nourishing ourselves.
So government has a role to play there, doesn't it? I mean,
yes.
Government creates the construct in which these farms are operating. The Governor Cuomo, for example, and I mentioned that he's very big on, these sort of craft breweries, right, and encouraging them and trying to create a tax structure that is helpful for them. But also the Greek yogurt industry, he has made some regulatory changes that people would say that are perhaps counter to the sustainable idea that you are talking about here.
I think eventually all of our agriculture is going to shift toward more of these traditional and often organic methods because it's cheaper in the long run and it's healthier. I think even in the dairy industry, we're going to see more and more people recognizing the value of going in that direction. It's hard. It's not easy. It's expensive at first. There are certain knowledge hurdles to get over and sort of growing pains to get there. But the government certainly can help encourage smaller farms, and I think that's a place where we're seeing a lot of talk and a lot of pressure coming from different organizations trying to say, look, don't write all the rules for the big dairy farms or for the big industries. Remember that we have a lot of smaller farms. Washington County, for example, where we are, and Warren County. There are some very big farms there, but there are more and more smaller farms, something like 2 to 20 or 30 acres or so, producing fabulous foods, fabulous cheeses, for example. Some of the best cheeses in America are coming out of Warren and Washington County right now. And these are small operations.
So there's legislation that actually would provide guidance to farmers for best practices. Mm-hmm. Is there more that could be done? And it seems like a lot of this is an education piece, which is where, of course, you come in. So what more could be done to educate both farmers and elected officials on sustainability?
Well, I think we need to look at the costs that are being incurred, and not just in dollars and cents, but in terms of erosion and water pollution, runoff of hazardous chemicals that are used as herbicides or pesticides, and recognize that somehow we need to account for those and then work towards scaling back. Government can provide incentives for transitioning over to a different approach, for example.
But are we? I mean, how are we doing, in your opinion?
From where I sit, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. New York State has some fabulous agriculture, some great programs and some great producers. But we've also got some big gaps where we certainly hear smaller farmers concerned that some of the rules that are being developed are not helpful to them because they're aimed for bigger farms. There are usually exemptions, and I think that's important. If you're smaller than a certain dollar amount per year, then you may not have to meet this particular requirement.
Right.
Things like that are definitely coming, but if we don't keep asking for more high-quality food, getting well distributed within our region, there's a tendency to sort of go for the big that has a big export market, and that often leaves the local and the smaller farmer and the smaller consumer looking for food, and then it comes from California instead of from here.
Well, we will be talking more about local farming and sustainability. And Professor, I do thank you for your time. It's been good to talk to you this evening.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.